Have you ever tried to smooth talk your way out of something only to realize a second too late that the evidence is literally written all over your face? I mean, it is a terrifying, but honestly hilarious moment of realization. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating psychological look at bad lies, everyday deception, and the immediate, unavoidable consequences they trigger. We're going to break down exactly how we, as human beings, rationalize breaking the rules, and more importantly, how our own completely fabricated stories inevitably just collapse under the weight of physical reality. So let's just dive straight into this pseudo-serious forensic case study, which we're calling The Invisible Thief Anatomy of a Bad Lie. Now, on the surface, our source material today is this super simple, seemingly petty incident involving two friends and a stolen packet of chips. But as you'll see, this little snack theft is actually a masterclass in behavioral breakdown. It perfectly showcases the anatomy of a truly terrible lie and how those lies invariably trigger some pretty swift consequences. All right, part one, the chip security protocol, or establishing the high-stakes environment. Notice the initial dynamic that gets set up right off the bat here. We have friend one who walks into the room holding a packet of chips and immediately lays down a crystal clear preemptive security boundary. They say, "Don't touch my chips. I'll know if anyone eats them." So the stakes are officially set, right? But look at the immediate reaction from friend two. They respond with, "Relax, I don't even like chips." In the study of deception, this right here is classic overcompensation. Friend two doesn't just agree to respect the boundary, they completely deny even having the motive to break it. It's a highly suspicious, knee-jerk denial that really sets the stage for the whole shebang. Moving on to part two, the slippery slope, and the escalation of a crime. This sequence just brilliantly illustrates the psychology of rationalization. The very second friend one leaves the room, that boundary gets tested. Friend two eats a single chip. Step one is that little micro-justification we all do. Just one, they'll never notice. It feels like a tiny, totally victimless infraction. But literally seconds later, we hit step two. Okay, maybe just one more. And there it is. The logical leap has been made. I mean, if one goes unnoticed, surely a second one is fine, right? This rapid, slippery slope of mental gymnastics leads straight to step three, where the packet is suddenly completely empty. Friend two has gone from an absolute denial of motive to consuming the entire asset, all through a rapid series of tiny self-permitted rule breaks. Which brings us to section three, anatomy of bad lies and the desperate cover-up. Okay, so when friend one comes back to find their stash completely wiped out, we witness a rapid-fire deployment of the most terrible, panicky lies imaginable. Faced with the sudden question, "Wait, where are all my chips?" Friend two just straight up panics. Caught totally off guard, their brain grasps for the nearest possible excuse that removes their own agency, and the result, this defense. "I think the chips evaporated." Obviously, this defies the basic laws of physics. Friend one naturally points out that chips do not, in fact, evaporate. And just like that, friend two has instantly destroyed their own credibility with an impossible defense strategy. But here's the kicker. Instead of just confessing when that first lie gets dismantled, friend two doubles down. Maybe they got scared and ran away. You guys, the lies are now escalating into sheer ridiculousness. Friend two is actually personifying the snack, giving the chips emotions and legs, rather than just admitting to eating them. This is the absolute hallmark of a desperate cover-up. The liar commits so heavily to their false reality that they just abandon logic entirely. Now for section four, the physical evidence. This is where lies meet reality. So here is where we reach the major turning point. On one hand, we have the defense. Friend two actually tries to use a lack of surveillance to their advantage. They say, "Check the CCTV," knowing perfectly well there isn't a camera in the room. When friend one confirms this, friend two confidently declares, "Exactly, no evidence." They have this completely false sense of security. But on the other hand, we have reality. Friend one immediately pivots from environmental security to forensic reality, asking, "Then what's all that chip powder on your shirt?" The lack of a camera is suddenly rendered completely moot by the cold, hard physical evidence physically attached to the perpetrator. Totally shocked by this revelation, friend two looks down and literally has to invent a brand new reality right there on the spot to explain away the powder. And this is what they come up with. They claim they were hugging the packet to comfort it. Just think about that for a second. This is a desperate, entirely fabricated excuse to explain the forensic presence of chip powder on their clothing, delivered with a straight face. They're actually leaning back into that personification lie from earlier that the chips were scared to justify physically embracing the snack bag. It is an incredible, almost impressive mental gymnastics routine. But friend one is not letting them off the hook. They press further. And the crumbs on your face. Friend two's narrative hits its absolute breaking point right here. The alibi completely falls apart as friend two claims those facial crumbs are just from providing emotional support to the packet. The visual imagery here is just amazing. The attempt to weave physical evidence, literal crumbs around the mouth, into a narrative about emotionally comforting a bag of chips, that is the absolute peak of a bad lie. Finally, Section 5, the final verdict and the consequences of the cover-up. So, the consequence of this entire ridiculous charade is swift and it's direct. Friend one simply says, "Nice try. You're buying the next packet." Because the physical evidence so heavily contradicted the fabricated story, the lie collapses entirely. Friend two's poorly constructed deception doesn't just fail to protect them, it actively triggers a swift financial penalty. They now have to replace the stolen goods out of pocket. This perfectly illustrates our main focus today. How bad lies don't just fail in a vacuum, they trigger direct, unavoidable consequences. As the case closes, friend two leaves us with the ultimate takeaway from this explainer. Rule number 1, if you steal snacks, don't wear the evidence. Listen, it really doesn't matter how clever you think your verbal defense is. Poorly constructed lies are always undone by ignored physical reality. If your grand narrative doesn't match the literal crumbs on your face, the narrative loses every single time. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. Next time you are tempted by an unguarded snack, or hey, maybe just tempted to weave a little white lie in your own everyday life, is your alibi crumb-proof? Have you checked your metaphorical shirt for powder? Because as we've clearly seen today, the evidence of our actions is often far more visible than we realize, and the consequences are usually right around the corner. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating breakdown with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.